So being on Perry Mason, one of the things I know that shows like to do is they like to have like what they call a tone meeting where you come in and
Yes,
you kind of learn the visual voice of the show. I was wondering if you can kind of just walk us through that, right? What that was like.
it was interesting. The showrunners and the producer. Well, of course, you go through each scene. You
Hmm.
discuss what the heart of the scene is about.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest, writer and director, Marialy Rivas. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
So you directed a few episodes on Perry Mason on HBO, which is so exciting. We're definitely going to kind of dive into that and chat about your take and approach to it. Before we get there, I would love if we can talk about really your origin story, how you broke in to the industry, especially coming from, the Chilean industry.
Right. It's a bit of a, I always say to my manager that she did a magic trick for me from my
Yeah.
standpoint, because I was raised during Pinochet dictatorship. I always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 7 years old, but in that time, filmmakers were either exiled or killed, and all film school were closed. So it
Wow.
was like a really kind of crazy dream to have at that time.
Okay.
And inside that dream, because I was raised in a family that I didn't watch TV, so I went a lot to the movies and to any movie that was on. So I used to see Tarkovsky at 12 because it was in the cinema, but also Rocky. So I think I was informed, or my film culture was always an aspiration to mix the the depths I saw in some European cinema, but also the reach to the audiences that American cinema had at that time. Nowadays that is more mixed, but I was always aiming to break into the American market. Like when I did my short film in 2010, I went to the Cannes film official selection,
Okay.
and then I did my first feature right the year after, and I did not apply to Cannes. And I said to my producer, I want to go to Sundance. And he was like, "What are you talking about? We just were in the official selection in Cannes. Why don't we go to try to apply to Cannes? You never know if you're gonna make it, right?" And I said, because if I see my life ahead, I just imagine working over there because I like the way they talk to audiences and see the movies. So it was a long, long time dream. And Ariel Mieslin, my manager, got me into the door with the producers of Perry Mason. I guess they liked my take on their season two, and we got the job. So it was a dream come true. And it was in
Wow.
LA. It was like everything you can dream of. I used to walk around with my wife through LA and thinking like, is this really like, how is this happening? Like it seems so out of like your wildest dreams.
So how many years was that from your dream of or from submitting to Con to getting to be on Perry Mason?
Can I went in 2010 that
Wow.
I did that short film. And before that, I did a student short film in 1996 that ended up being one of the first queer movies of Chile, the first queer movie of
Wow.
Chile. So it's always been like a chunk of time because it's hard. In Chile,
Yeah.
it's really hard to make movies, to get the finance. So like I do something and then it takes a long time to push. And when I went with Young and Wild to Sundance, even though we won Best Script that year, the American market was not open
Right.
to foreign filmmakers or even female filmmakers. So it was also another time waiting and waiting, and
Yeah.
kept working over here in Latam. I did some shows, and then that happened. Like
I
the
just
breakthrough happened.
well, yeah, it's the it's the overnight success, even though you've been doing it for over 13, 14 years. I mean, it just really shows how long you have to stick with it and really make it happen. And that's what it sounds like you've done. Especially in the American market, I feel like the American market is just recently really started being open towards foreign filmmakers, and I'm really excited to see that you're really groundbreaking in that aspect.
Well, I think it has to do also with the amazing people at Team Downey. They were they knew they had, for example, Latinx stories, so they wanted Latinos in the show. And those type of decisions really make a difference in the world industry of creatives and artists and filmmakers.
Yeah. Growing up myself, I always like to say that movie theaters or cinemas were my church, and I would find inspiration and solace within going to the movies. Is that something that you still do to this day?
I try to go to the movies as much as I can. Like when I'm here in Chile, art houses are more difficult to find or to go to, but we do have certain good ones. And yes, like that ritual, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
sacred to sit
I
down
agree.
and see that immense like screen, and the sound, it just like wraps you around.
Yeah.
So
And I always found that at my worst days, I could find peace at the theater. And to this day, I will still go there. And what I'm getting at is it's, you know, it sounds like you grew up in a pretty tough time in Chile. So I was wondering if that was one of your escapes.
it was one of my escapes. I don't know if I was conscious enough, because when you're a child, they don't overtly tell you the danger you're in with your family,
Yeah.
but you kind of pick it up from everything. So yeah, it was a
So
way to. Also, I was a lesbian growing up in a very homophobic society. Not my family,
right.
luckily for me, but yes, the society. So I was very much kept to myself in many senses, and I kept going to the movies over and over. I saw Paris, Texas once, and the three shows of that day at the theater. One with a friend, one with my parents, and one by myself. I was this obsessed with films.
That's hilarious. So being on Perry Mason, one of the things I know that shows like to do is they like to have like what they call a tone meeting where you come in and
Yes,
you kind of learn the visual voice of the show. I was wondering if you can kind of just walk us through that, right? What that was like.
it was interesting. The showrunners and the producer. Well, of course, you go through each scene. You
Hmm.
discuss what the heart of the scene is about. You ask them if they envision something in particular for any of these scenes. But this team of showrunner and producers were very open to ideas as well. So it was a
Yeah.
very beautiful and collaborative process, especially episode 5 when you're 8, because you're just closing everything. You're just shooting the most beautiful you can. But during episode 5, we did talk a lot about the scripts. Then I did table reads with the actors, and together, and sometimes by myself with the DP or whoever wanted to pitch in, we arrived to new proposals to the scripts, and they were open, super open to say, okay, like we like this idea that you're proposing. Of course, all the ideas were always in the reach of their world and their arena and things that we have discussed, but maybe we're not making it into the series at that point. Like
Yeah.
all this stuff. It's not like I'm saying, oh, let's land like this rocket in the middle of the series. It was just like, oh, I remember you talk about this. Do you think we can do this here? And they were really generous and open about listening to
Yeah.
directors. So it was a wonderful, wonderful way to work and collaborate and be received by such an industry as Hollywood. I've heard some showrunners are like, you cannot tell them anything, or
Right.
they don't want to hear the ideas, but this bunch of people were amazing.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because to me it sounds incredibly difficult to come on a show follow the tone and the visual style of the show, but yet as a director, still bring in your own voice. And so I was wondering, like, did you find struggles with that, or were you able to really kind of show off your style while still honoring a show like Perry Mason on HBO?
It's a weird question to ask because you should ask the producer and the showrunners. But I think I'm very drawn to characters' arc,
Hmm.
and I like to stay with them really close, with the camera close, even to them. And we
Hmm.
discussed this previously when we were discussing the possibility of me joining their team. So I was very focused and precise, and the notes I kept giving always had to do with this type of stuff
Yeah.
of like, how do we make this arc more mm, it's not sensitive the word, but more approachable? How do we bring the audience closer to the journey of this
Yeah.
character? So I think with the camera, I think I work on that consciously, and also in the notes for the story. And yes, and I try to instill, of course, the show has this noir
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will use like I like to enhance very little. Always this you need to do it with a percentage, a small percentage, because you cannot like break what is set up, like that is also part of your job, to respect and honor what
Yeah.
it's been work by the showrunners and the producers. But every time I could, I will push a little thing here, a little thing there. And then you also have this amazing, talented crew of people like the DPs, the actors, like the cast. They know so much about their characters. So I like to discuss a lot and work beforehand and just discover if they feel comfortable with the character, with the lines, with the setting. So all that, I
Yeah.
think, is my way to approach the work. So
Do you think?
I think it shows, but you should ask that to the producer and the showrunners instead of me, I think.
Let me get them on, and I'll let them, and I'll ask them real quick. Um, so you've directed shorts, you've directed features, and now you've directed TV. Are you seeing a big difference in your approach, or are you just kind of trying to adapt to the unique way of storytelling?
I like a challenge. For many years, I also directed commercials here in Chile because we do not have an industry. And I
Okay.
have done music videos. Like, I think a director needs to be able to direct everything.
Yeah.
And TV for me is more about plot and character, and a consistency of that in all the episodes, especially in a season two, where and movies are more about atmosphere. So it's different. I think TV has more dialogue, movies has more silence, and you wait and you stay in the face of someone, and suddenly that says something. Or for example, Vivre sa vie. I don't know the name in English. I'm not trying to be snob. I just don't know the translation of the title of this
Okay.
Godard movie. It's a character called Nana, and it's a very easy story. It's a girl that moves to Paris from a poor countryside and wants to be famous and wants to be an actress, a model, and she ended up being need, forced to be a prostitute, and she dies in the hands of her pimp. But that is not the movie. The movie is Nana dancing around a pool table, flirting to a guy. Is Nana going to the movies to watch Jeanne d'Arc and be very emotional about watching a movie and what it
Mhm.
means to her in her life. And I think movies are about all those detours, not the plot, but all like cinematography lives in those detours, in these
Yeah.
spaces, in this yes, in these detours. Whereas TV, you have to go straight and you need the plot twist, or else the audience is gonna change the channel. So
Right.
it's a different medium, but I think they're both exciting, and I'm always willing to learn and challenge myself to new things.
I think that sounds like really the key to it is being adaptable and being able to learn and challenge yourself in order to work across that kind of a spectrum. Because if you're just a feature director and you can't, change focus and learn, you're not going to make it in TV. And I think it's fascinating you've been able to direct all of these different types of mediums and really kind of add them to your toolbox. So like you're ready to go and do anything. You're always going to have work.
I hope so, because I want to die shooting. That's my goal. I hope to be 90 years old and be like falling from a cliff like with a camera, you know.
Do you have a favorite moment of directing Perry Mason, or a moment that really stands out to you that was challenging, that you're able to figure out a workaround?
I'm gonna talk only about episode 5 because episode 8 is not still out.
Sounds good. Episode 5.
The Gallardo's brothers raid, where you see the police beating up this Mexican community, Mexican American community. Because in Chile, when I was a child, this used to be a thing that happened all the time.
Oh
So it
my
felt
gosh.
very connected to my personal story. So when I was there, I was very emotional while shooting the scene. And that day was my birthday. So the whole crew and all the extras, everyone sang me happy birthday. And it felt like really important in an emotional sense.
Marialy, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
No, I don't think so. I just want to say again, highlight how wonderful the producers and the showrunners were, how brilliant, generous, and everything you can hope for in a job. And the same for the crew and the actors. I felt honored to be able to hop on that adventure with all of them.
So you directed season 2, episode 5, and episode 8 of Perry Mason. Anything else coming up down the line?
Well, I just showrun a show here in Latam for another platform, but it's gonna be next year, and I'm shooting my next feature in August in Mexico. So I'm
That's
excited and
incredible.
happy.